Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, honestly fascinating question. How exactly did something as simple as a bouncing ball become the ultimate unifier for a nation of over 300 million people? The United States is incredibly unique. Unlike a lot of other nations, it isn't defined by a single shared religion or one ethnic group. Instead, it's really defined by a shared civic identity. And as we're going to see today, ball sports have played an absolutely crucial role in forging that exact identity. They've essentially become a shared language for our entire society.
Okay, let's dive into this sweeping 3,500-year chronological journey. We're going to cover 1. The birth of the ball. 2. Immigrants in the New World. 3. Baseball as a cultural mirror. 4. Football as America's modern passion. And 5. Forging a civic identity.
Section 1. The birth of the ball. Ancient origins.
Right, so to understand how sports shape an entire nation today, we've got to start with the basic physical element itself. If you look in the dictionary, a ball is simply defined as a round or roundish body used in a game. Profound, right? But establishing this super obvious baseline actually sets up one of the most surprising mysteries in sports history, a mystery that has everything to do with the materials used to make this simple little object.
So, here's a question for you to chew on. Why didn't the ancient Greeks or the Romans or the Egyptians invent basketball? They had these massive, complex societies, gigantic arenas, and obviously a deep love for physical competition. They even played their own games using animal skins or bladders stuffed with random materials. But they never actually invented a game based on a bouncing ball. So why not?
Well, it literally all comes down to natural resources. The ancient Mesoamericans cracked the code over 3,500 years ago, around 1600 BC, simply because they had access to rubber trees. They were the very first people to use bouncy rubber, or latex, to create these heavy balls that could weigh up to 8 pounds. They played intensely competitive games on masonry fields inside these eye-shaped courts, and the stakes? Absolutely wild. Winners were offered vast wealth and huge prestige, while the losers, well, sometimes they paid with their lives in ritual sacrifices. Crazy enough, it wasn't until the voyages of Columbus that Europeans even laid eyes on a bouncing rubber ball.
And long before our modern leagues came along, ball games here on the North American continent held profound meaning. Native American tribes played these intense stickball games, kind of similar to modern lacrosse, that could literally last for days or even weeks. But the fundamental purpose was totally different from what was going on across the Atlantic. Native American games were deeply rooted in spiritual practices and healing rituals, with players prepping through prayers, pipe smoking, and body painting. You contrast that with the European ball games of the era, which were mostly just focused on leisure, fun, and recreation. But as we move forward into the 1800s, the landscape of the United States and its entire sporting culture was about to change drastically.
Section 2. Immigrants and the New World. Bringing the games.
So, the crucial point here is this staggering number, 30 million. Between 1836 and 1914, over 30 million European immigrants poured into the United States. And they didn't just bring their families and their labor, they actually imported their specific sporting customs. When you combine that influx with the Industrial Revolution, advances in travel, and people suddenly finding themselves with a little more leisure time and wealth, well, these imported games basically laid the essential groundwork for the massive organized leagues we watch today. Just look at how incredibly fast global ball games transformed from these chaotic, unwritten local pastimes into highly organized sports. In 1845, the very first set of rules was written for rugby over in England. Literally the next year, 1846, the first formally recorded baseball game was played at the Elysian Fields in New Jersey by the New York Knickerbockers. And by 1863, clubs were gathering at the Freemasons Tavern in London to establish the formal rules for soccer. In a span of less than 20 years, the wild games of the past were totally codified into the structured sports we know today.
Section 3. Baseball, a cultural mirror reflecting shifting values. Out of all the games taking root in the U.S., baseball absolutely rose above the rest. But it wasn't just a fun pastime. Its evolution perfectly mirrored the rise of American capitalism. Think about it. It started in 1845 as a purely amateur pursuit with clubs like the Knickerbockers. But by 1858, people realized these games were competitive enough to actually draw paying spectators, so the first official league was founded. And then finally, in 1869, the Cincinnati Red Stockings became the very first all-professional team, paying their players under contract. The game had officially shifted from a friendly club activity into a professional, profit-driven enterprise. And this brilliantly illustrates how baseball wasn't just mirroring business, it was reflecting and actually challenging social struggles. During the heavy racial discrimination of the 19th and 20th centuries,
baseball served as a vital unifying force for the African American community. We saw the Pythian Baseball Club form way back in 1876, and then the Negro National League in 1931. Ultimately, when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947, baseball didn't just reflect society anymore. It was a catalyst. It gave the entire nation a highly visible, real-world example of integration to follow.
Section 4. Football, America's modern passion, from the gridiron to the globe. Now, while baseball might be America's historical pastime, it eventually had to make room for a massive new giant. American football actually evolved directly from English rugby, which had drifted into the U.S. thanks to those European immigrants we just talked about. But in 1872 at Yale, a guy named Walter Camp completely Americanized the sport. He took the fluid, continuous play of traditional rugby and replaced it with rigid organization. He introduced the line of scrimmage, set codes of play, and a much more structured approach to downs and distance. Soon after, they threw in protective padding, creating this distinct, highly strategic, and super physical game that was entirely unique to America.
But if you want to know what truly launched football into the national consciousness, it was actually World War I. When the U.S. entered the war in 1917, football players flocked to sign up. And the military, they eagerly embraced the sport's aggressive win-at-all-costs ethos. General John J. Pershing, who commanded the Allied Expeditionary Force, praised the sport, noting that in football, a man is trained to physical perfection under strict discipline, yet is still capable of brilliant individual action in a crisis. The military literally saw it as the perfect training mechanism for soldiers, shipping tons of football equipment over to France and introducing millions of young men to the game.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing what cemented football's absolute dominance, the post-World War II media era. Football's entire structure, with its frequent pauses and sudden explosive plays, was practically custom-built for television. Just look at this data from 2012. An NFL playoff game commanded a staggering 42 million viewers. The College Football Championship pulled in 24 million. And you compare that to the NBA Finals at 18 million. Football figured out really early on that its specific mix of athleticism, teamwork, and televised drama would captivate audiences like absolutely nothing else.
Section 5. Forging a Civic Identity, the Ultimate Unifier.
So this brings us to the real macro focus of our explainer today. How do these multi-billion-dollar professional leagues, which remember started from rubber trees and immigrant traditions, actually shape the collective American identity? Well, researchers call attending or watching pro sports an experience good. The real value comes from consuming it jointly with other fans. The intangible benefits are just massive. For a diverse nation of 300 million people, sports provide that much-needed shared civic identity. They give us a common emotional language that bridges deep ethnic, religious, and economic divides. Locally, these franchises act as huge community anchors, driving urban development and civic pride. And globally, American sports project soft power, acting as instruments of cultural diplomacy that make the U.S. visible and influential far beyond traditional politics.
Ultimately, sports are so much more than just a game. They are literally the threads that help weave a highly diverse society together. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look around your own city or town. How do your local sports teams, whether that's a massive NFL franchise, a minor league baseball team, or even just your local high school, shape the identity of your own community? Think about how that shared passion connects you to your neighbors. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep exploring the incredible history behind the things we love.